On March 17th, 2026, the Georgian Orthodox people experienced the greatest loss of this century. Patriarch Ilia. In the 111 years since the Georgian Church regained its autocephaly from Russia, she has had 9 patriarchs. Patriarch Ilia was able to oversee the church for 49 of those years. This was a video I never wanted to make. This is the day my beloved patriarch has become a saint. Of course, Patriarch Ilia has not been canonized. After all, at the time of this portion of the script being written, he only reposed 3 days ago. But his official canonization does not matter to me in the slightest. I have no trouble or hesitation calling this holy man Saint Ilia, nor should you. Before he was patriarch or even a priest, he was simply Irakli Shiolashvili, son of Georgi Shiolashvili and Natalia Kobaidze. From his father's side, his family had a long history. It's said that during the 5th century, under King Vakhtan Gorgasali, a warrior named Snow distinguished himself in battle. The king named a village in Khazbegi after him and baptized his son, whom he named Gudusha, founder of the Gudushauri clan. The village of Snow became their ancestral home and still exists today. In the 17th century, Shiola Gudushauri was born there and became such a prominent member of the clan that his name formed a branch family, the Shiolashvilis. From this line came Irakli Shiolashvili. Irakli was born in 1933 in a North Ossetian city, Orjonikidze, which in the modern day is called Vladikavkaz. And while his family wasn't poor, they were still part of the peasant class. He was the 4th child of his family, and he was baptized on January 7th during Christmas in St. Nino's Georgian Orthodox Church in Orjonikidze. During this time, the Soviets ruled over Georgia, and it was not safe to be an Orthodox Christian. Irakli's parents often provided refuge to clergymen who were hiding from the Soviet government, and these priests had a large influence on Irakli's worldview growing up. His family were even acquaintances of Saint Kalishtotas, who at the time was the Georgian Patriarch. In fact, the Patriarch maintained contact with the Georgian Orthodox community in the city of Orjonikidze through Irakli's father. Then, Irakli experienced a loss that would change his life forever.
უფროსი ძმის გარდაცვალება თეიმურაზი ერქვა ჩემს ძმას უფროს. მე ვიყავი მერვე კლასში. იგი აღარ გახდა მეინგიტეთ და მეახლოვდებოდა შობა. ერთხელ იწვა ის უკვე მე ვიდექი კარებთან და მეუბნება ირაკლი მოდი აქ. მივედი და მეუბნება შეხედე ვინ მოვიდა ჩვენთან. ვინ მეთქი და წმინდა მინო. და შემდეგ მე გარდაიცვალა შემდეგ მე ვრახე იგი სიზმარში. ბათკანი დადიოდა და მე ვეუბნები ვიღაცას ვეკითხები, რომ ვისი ეს ბათკანი. და მოვიდა იგი და ჩემთან. და ადამიანის ენით მეუბნება, მე შენი ძმა ვარ. Emotions. Arbanes. Batgani. Ხელში და არბანე ოთახში. დავაყენე სადაც ჰქონდა ჩვენ დიდი კუთხე ხატების და შუაში მოდამ იყო საქართველოს დიდება იმის თავზე მამა ღმერთი ეს ჩემი რაც ჩემი თავი მახსოვდა სულ ასე იყო და მე მეუბნები მას რომ მაჩვენე შენი ნამდვილი სახვი და უსმად მათგანი გახდა თეიმურაზ როგორც იყო სიცოცხლეში მოვეღვიე მას და მეკითხები შენ მეთქი ლოცულობ ჩემთვის და მან მაჩვენა საქართველოს დიდებას სადაც ყველა წმინდანებია ჩვენ აი ეს ხალხიო ეს ეზო ესე იგი ჩანს რომ ერთ ადგილზე არიან ჩვენი წერაკლები ეს ხალხიო ეს ეზო ყველა ლოცულობს შენთვის ეს ასია მე ვგრძნობა მას ისინი რომ ლოცულობდნენ მე ვერ ავიტანდი ამ სიგიჩვარს
It is my opinion that these events are what fully pushed Irakli into joining the priesthood of the Orthodox Church and what set his course to becoming Patriarch. Interacting with priests is one thing, and having an encounter with the divine, especially through your departed brother, is another entirely. As we will come to find out, the Patriarch's love for his people was great, and he single-handedly revived the Georgian Orthodox Church and brought it to what it is today. His actions affected hundreds of thousands of lives directly. One of them I decided to bring on for this video.
My name is Father Alexander Tendilashvili. I'm director of St. Nino Georgian Orthodox Church in Brooklyn, New York. I came here in November 1988. I came here to continue my studies. His Holiness decided that I must come to here, New York, to the United States. It was his idea. I did not know anything about it. That was very unexpected for me. Of course, I was happy. I liked that idea. I was 20 years old when I first went to the Sionic Cathedral. His Holiness was just very new, fresh Patriarch of Georgia. He was enthroned in December 25, 1997, and I came to the church, started coming to the church only after 3 months. So I remember him he was very young. He was 44 then and became 45. Since then I used to come every Saturday, every Sunday, and every feast days to Sionic Cathedral, and eventually very soon, maybe 2 months after that, I became an altar boy. I used to serve him there in the altar, and that made me very happy.
To understand the man that would later inspire such deep devotion, let's return back to his story. When Irakli graduated from high school, knowing his calling had always been the church, he began attending the Moscow Theological Academy. In his first year of theological seminary, he was awarded for the best term paper in his class. His writings showcased a depth of knowledge and his orthodox heart. In his second year, he decided to take monastic vows, but this was not an impulsively made decision. Irakli first received the blessings from not only the rector of his academy, but also Patriarch Alexei I of Moscow and Patriarch Melchizedek III of Georgia. All three were convinced of his resolve, and Irakli was tonsured a monk at the young age of 25. This was when Irakli officially chose the name Ilia, which is Elijah for our American audience. 2 days later, he was made a deacon by Patriarch Melchizedek, and 2 years after that he was made a priest by Patriarch Alexei. An important thing to note was Ilia's deep connection and love of both the Russian and Georgian churches, certainly the reason he would continue to advocate for peace between the two churches throughout his ministry. After a few more years of theological study in Russia, Ilia was offered the chance to continue his theological studies and become a scholar, but he declined in favor of being a simple parish priest. This was not a decision he made alone, but with the advice from the next Georgian Patriarch, Ephraim II, who told Ilia to follow his heart. So Ilia returned to Georgia and was appointed as a priest of the Cathedral of St. Nicholas in Batumi. In 1960, he became the archpriest of the cathedral. It is also important to know that the city he was assigned to, Batumi, is in the region of Adjara, which is partly Islamic. And through Ilia's efforts, Orthodoxy was strengthened in the region, and there was a growth in the number of Orthodox Christians there. Then, in 1969, Ilia was elevated to the rank of metropolitan. At this point, he was still young, only 36 years old, and already a metropolitan. During this era, Ilia's work expanded much further beyond that of a parish and reached even a global level. For example, his appearance during the Third Pan-Orthodox Conference on the island of Rhodes in 1964, where he argued for the recognition of the autocephaly of the Georgian Orthodox Church within the Orthodox world. Some will know that the Russian Church had forcefully and egregiously absorbed the Georgian Church during the Tsardom, and it took the Tsardom falling in the 1920s for the Georgian Church to regain independence. Though the Russian Church had recognized its autocephaly already by the 1940s, the rest of the Orthodox world hadn't yet done so, seeing it still as only an autonomous church under Russia. Though the Church had been autocephalous before Russia's absorption of it, and had been a governing patriarchate for almost 1,000 years, at this conference Ilia argued for the historical validity of Georgian autocephaly. Failing to gain an understanding from the participants, he left the meeting in protest.
A lot of churches, like Patriarch of Constantinople, some other patriarchs would not recognize Georgia as an independent autocephalous church. They thought it was an autonomous church, but when you are autonomous, you belong to someone like either Russia or someone else, but it wasn't part of Russia, that's 100%. But he fixed that too. It wasn't easy to speak with the Patriarch of Constantinople. It's not that easy. But he fixed that problem too. He fixed many other problems. I don't know everything because I've been here how many years? Almost 38 years. And a lot of good things were done in Georgia, which I just don't know.
On April 7th, 1972, Catholicos Patriarch Ephraim II reposed, and Ilia was one of the favored candidates to become the next Georgian Patriarch. It was even rumored that it was in fact Patriarch Ephraim's will for Ilia to be the next Patriarch. However, Ilia's candidacy for the patriarchal throne was rejected by the chairman of the USSR Council for Religious Affairs, or CRA, citing Ilia's disruption of the Rhodes Pan-Orthodox meeting in 1964. Let's recall that these events took place during the era of communism, and the Orthodox Church was greatly subjugated. In proper circumstances, a secular authority should never have power to determine or affect the affairs of the Church, but this was not the reality in 20th century Georgia. Instead, the next patriarch would be David V.
Before the Patriarch Ilia, there was Patriarch David. He was a good man. He was an old man. He only was patriarch for 5 years. One Russian person told me, he's a monk, he was in Jordanville years ago. He told me that he was in Tbilisi. And in Kashueti church, the upper level, there are 2 levels. There's basement church and there is upper main church. There were services in the main church in Georgia, and in the lower level, there was services in Slovak. And this guy told me that he went to the main church, to the second level, and he said there was nobody. Patriarch was serving there. There were no people. He said, I went downstairs, and in the Russian service, it was full. Old people, but still it was full. It's not that he was that popular. Nobody has anything against him. It just was a bad time,
It was thought that he was selected by the USSR and had Soviet allegiances. It was also suggested that he worked with the Communist Party to rob Orthodox treasures from the churches. I've read of some rumors that he was a corrupt patriarch.
No, that's totally a big lie. No,
I thought so
he
too.
wasn't corrupt. He did not even. That guy even did not even have a car. He had the one car that what can they call the Zhiguli, small car. No patriarch would even sit in that car, but he used to drive on that car. No, there was nothing there to steal, to misuse. You know, no money, nothing, no wealth, nothing.
I personally agree with Father Alexander that these are nothing but slanderous accusations, but that's a tragedy in and of itself. Nevertheless, for these reasons or perhaps others, Patriarch David was never really popular, and he passed away 5 years after taking the patriarchal throne. On November 9th, 1977, the Holy Synod elected Metropolitan Ilia as interim of the patriarchal throne. Then, it finally happened, the moment in history that would change the Georgian Orthodox world forever. A single vote made by a Holy Synod on December 23rd at the 12th Local Council of the Georgian Orthodox Church, held in Tbilisi's Sioni Cathedral, Metropolitan Ilia was chosen as the next patriarch of the church. And so, a new epoch began. On December 25th, his enthronement took place in the Svetitskhovely Cathedral in Tsketa, attended by the bishops of the Georgian Church, a Russian delegation led by Patriarch Pimen of Moscow, and an Armenian delegation by Catholicos Vazgen I.
მოგმართავთ ყველა დელეგატს. თქვენ ნუ მოგერიდებათ. უკეთ უკავთ თქვენ სხვა კანდიდატი. თქვენ შეგიძლიათ გადაშალოთ ის სახელი, რომელიც წერია იქ და დააწეროთ სხვა.
It was said that the city of Tsketa had not seen such a multitude of people since March 25th, 1917, the day of the restoration of the Georgian Church's autocephaly. That day, he said to the crowd of faithful solemnly, I am aware of the most difficult and at the same time honorable duty that the Lord has laid upon me under the arches of this holy church. I bow my head before the Georgian Church and her flock, the Georgian people, whom I must serve with reverence with all my strength and mind, with that faith, defending and preserving that for which our small people have shed so much blood. And Patriarch Ilia meant every word. He would continue to serve the church magnificently throughout the rest of his life. When Ilia became patriarch, the Georgian church was almost completely destroyed. In a country that supposedly had 4 million Orthodox Christians, the senior hierarchy of the Georgian Orthodox Church consisted only of 7 bishops. There were 15 dioceses, including 5 vacant ones, only 34 registered churches, and 4 monasteries that were not officially registered. Keep in mind that these days, even though the population of Georgia has not changed much, there are 47 dioceses, over 2,000 churches, 3,000 clergymen, and over 170 monasteries. We'll see through the rest of this documentary that this meteoric resurgence of orthodoxy in Georgia can be attributed in large part to the efforts of Patriarch Ilia. You think most of that can be attributed to Patriarch Ilia?
Not most of it, 100% you have to attribute every success that Georgian church has, you have to attribute it to His Holiness. Absolutely everything.
Because of Soviet ideological pressure, church life had been drastically weakened. During this time, those attending Orthodox churches may have been reported and arrested, or fired from their jobs. Some attended underground services in secret. Some became nominal Christians, believing but not practicing a worthless orthodoxy.
People used to talk, oh, this is nonsense. Nobody's going to believe in God now, because we know God doesn't exist and stuff like that. But eventually, very soon, a lot of people became faithful believers.
Already in 1978, Ilia consecrated 4 new bishops in just 1 year. He allowed and facilitated celebrations to be held for the 1500th anniversary of the first Georgian hagiographic work, the martyrdom of Saint Shushanik. And during the celebrations, Georgia was visited by church delegations from Constantinople, Antioch, Mount Athos, and America. By January 1979, there were already 46 registered churches in Georgia and around 80 clergymen. Understanding that it was a necessity to have a theologically educated clergy, Ilia decreed that every Tuesday evening in Tbilisi's Sioni Cathedral, the seat of the Patriarchate, there would be 3 sermons, one of which he himself would always deliver. This was to make sure the clergy understood proper orthodoxy and would not simply preach their personal opinions. On February 8, 1978, the Holy Synod created a publishing department of the Patriarchate and began to issue official periodicals. On March 23, 1978, the USSR's CRA authorized publication of the church calendar in 2 forms, a wall calendar and a folding pocket calendar. These are things that today are taken for granted, but were not even a subject of consideration just 50 years ago in Georgia. Patriarch Ilia was able to negotiate with the Soviets for the benefit of the church. During this time, many upper hierarchs either did or did not do such things, and this method of political negotiation was both controversial and potentially rewarding or destructive at the same time. For the Georgian Church, Patriarch Ilia's intelligent and subtle political maneuvers were unquestionably beneficial. Soon after, a Sunday school was opened at Sioni Cathedral, where volunteers were taught church reading, choir singing, and needlework. Young people, despite pressures from the authorities, began to serve voluntarily as readers, subdeacons, teachers, copyists, cleaners, and anything else to help the church, though they were threatened by the authorities with expulsion from universities and firing from jobs.
We know many, not many, but at least few people in the history, like Basil the Great. He was the Patriarch of Cappadocia. He was a very popular person because, first of all, he did a lot of things for the people. Charity. He used to go and meet with the people. Sermons were beautiful. He attracted many people because of that. He was a person that people believed was a righteous person. And the same thing was with Patriarch Ilia. He was exceptional person. I don't know how to describe his sermon. His sermons would last at about 1 hour. And everyone wanted to listen. People would come to listen to his sermon. He had a personality, very special personality, that also attracted people. Also, he was a very smart and talented person, very educated person too. Very smart.
Even Communist Party officials began secretly attending Sioni Cathedral. The number of believers in other churches also increased significantly. For example, 5,000 people attended the Sukhumi Cathedral during Paschal celebrations in 1978, whereas in previous years there had been no more than 1,500.
Attendance was very low. I remember being there on Sunday at Sioni Cathedral, and the people that I counted was about 30 people, altogether. And then eventually, Sunday after Sunday, we used to get more and more young people that he would attract many people, but still, first month its number was low. And eventually, in 2-3 months, we had really much better situation. We had many people, but these people, they knew nothing about the church. They were just curious to come and see the Patriarch, to listen to his sermon, to listen to the singing and stuff like that.
The communist authorities noticed these changes. In his 1979 report, the representative of the CRA that oversaw Georgia, T. Onoprishvili, expressed serious concerns about the vigorous activity of the new Patriarch. He wrote that Ilia was strengthening the episcopate and attracting new personnel to the priesthood. For the first time, the Tzcheta Theological School had a full first-year class. The Georgian Church was also sending seminarians to study at the Moscow Theological Academy. Patriarch Ilia was strongly urged to reduce the number of services he celebrated and sermons he gave, but Ilia did not acquiesce to these demands. Eventually, Onoprishvili was removed from his position in the CRA for unsatisfactory work. What divine providence that the first communist authority during Ilia's reconstruction period was too mild to stop the Patriarch before he could even begin.
Like, it's the Kashueti church, it's of St. George and Rustaveli. Very few people used to attend the services.
And nowadays it's a lot higher.
Now it's full everywhere. I go to the church in Georgia, full.
Within the first 2 years of his patriarchate, 34 clergymen were ordained. Patriarch Ilia continued to petition for the registration of functioning churches and monasteries and for the reopening of churches whose buildings had been occupied by Soviet institutions. In 1980, he submitted a petition to the CRA requesting the opening of major spiritual centers of the Georgian Church, the Tbilisi churches of St. Nicholas, St. George, Jvaris Mama, Metechi, Anchischate, the Blue Monastery, and the monasteries of Guatachevi, Shemokmedi, Shiomruime, Zarzma, Sapara, Gelati, Ikalto, Martvili, David Gareja, and the churches of Ananuri, Tsaishi, Gremi, Ertatsminda, Samtavisi, Kinsvisi, Tsromi, Barakoni, and Bolnisisioni. It was unbelievable how effective the Patriarch was and how quickly his mission of reviving the church was being realized. During these early years, the Patriarch also traveled across Georgia, into large cities and small remote villages alike, baptizing the unbaptized youths during the communist era. Much of this is unfortunately undocumented, but it predated his mass baptism campaign that we'll talk about later. Many of these baptized godchildren still fondly remember their baptisms to this day. In 1988, Patriarch Ilia opened 45 churches. In the territory of Azerbaijan, 2 priests began serving in the Georgian church in Kachi. In Armenia, 2 churches were restored where 2 priests served. That same year, the Tbilisi Theological Academy was opened with the support of the next official of the CRA, A. Tsiklauri. By this time, even members of the Communist Party, whose given mission was to subjugate the church, were openly rallying behind the efforts of Patriarch Ilia. His beatitude was truly at the center of all major events taking place in the country. On April 9, 1989, during a mass demonstration on Rustaveli Avenue in Tbilisi, in front of the government house of the Georgian SSR, where calls were made for Georgia's secession from the USSR, Patriarch Ilia was alarmed by a gathering of Soviet military units in response to the protests. He came to the protesters at 3 a.m., urging them to remain calm and insisting that they accompany him to pray in the nearby Kashveti church.
Միախլամացնոպես, რომ საშიშროება რეალურია. შეიძლება ამ საშიშროებამდე დარჩა სულ რამდენიმე წუთი.
Most did not heed his words. As a result of the clashes with the troops, 19 people were killed. Patriarch Ilia's role in these events as a moral authority played a major part in helping the Georgian people endure the pain of that April 9th tragedy, later commemorated in Georgia as a day of mourning. In the early years of his patriarchate, Patriarch Ilia focused especially on securing recognition of Georgian autocephaly by the Ecumenical Patriarchate and the other local Orthodox churches. We'll remember that 30 years prior, his efforts had been rejected by the Greater Orthodox Church, and still till 1990, it was only the Russian Church and those in the Slavic tradition that had recognized the autocephaly of Georgia. On March 4, 1990, during the Feast of Orthodoxy, the Ecumenical Patriarch Demetrius I presented Ilia with a tomos certifying, quote, the ancient independent governance of the Georgian Church and the historical and traditional patriarchal title of the Georgian First Hierarch as Archbishop of Mtskheta and Tbilisi, Catholicos Patriarch of all Georgia, end quote. The place of the Georgian Church in the diptychs was fixed as 11th, due to what the Ecumenical Patriarch suggested was its later founding. There has been contention in recent decades with multiple churches in regards to their place in the diptychs, which is a term that describes the order in which the Orthodox churches commemorate each other at their services, with the Georgian Church advocating for its increase in position. By 2011, the Georgian Church had risen to 9th place. Until Ilia's repose, his ministry continually advocated for its increase in position. In the diptychs of the Russian Orthodox Church, it is listed 6th, after the Russian Church. Nevertheless, the full recognition of the autocephaly of the Georgian Orthodox Church obtained in 1990 was one of the most significant accomplishments of Patriarch Ilia, fulfilling not only his 30-year effort, but the 80-year effort of the Georgian Church since her freeing in 1917.
მე მინდა მთელ საქართველოს უთხრა, რომ არ გაუტყდეს გული. ყველაფერი ეს განსაცდელი, რაც გვაქვს, ყველაფერი გაივლის და ღმერთი გადმოხედავს ჩვენ მოწყალე თვალით.
Patriarch Ilia had an immense love for humanity, even the condemned criminals. In 1990, he sent a letter to Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, asking him to abolish the death penalty and find an alternative, calling for mercy towards those who acknowledged their errors, repented, and wanted to reform their lives. Prayer rooms have been established at almost every detention facility in Georgia at the insistence of his beatitude. Orthodox clergy have been given permission to not only visit inmates, but to petition for their pardons. This is not blind forgiveness of criminals as is advocated for by liberal parties in the West, but instead a measured Christian response to those wishing to repent of evil. The following year, in 1991, it finally happened. The nation of Georgia declared independence from the USSR. That year, a Russian Federation-backed rebellion occurred against the newly and democratically elected Georgian president Zviad Gamsakhurdi. During the conflict, Patriarch Ilia tried to reconcile the warring sides and arranged for negotiations to be held at the Patriarchate. These efforts had some effect, though they could not prevent violence altogether. Later on, Patriarch Ilia made an appearance on Rustaveli Avenue, which had once again become the main street in Tbilisi where the conflict was occurring. There, he would maintain a neutral stance and plead with both sides of the conflict to cease battle and to make peace. He would not be listened to, and the conflict raged on until the exile of President Zviad, with the former Soviet leader of Georgia, Eduard Shevardnadze, returning to rule for over a decade. The Patriarch, with the assistance of Patriarch Alexei II of Moscow and Metropolitan Kirill, was at least able to arrange for the removal of bodies from conflict zones during the war, allowing families to bury their dead according to Orthodox customs. He also took an active part in negotiations and in the release of prisoners of war. Later on May 25, 1995, the Gelati Academy, founded under King David Aghmashenebeli in the 12th century and renowned in the Middle Ages, was finally able to resume its work. Other theological educational institutions were opened in Kutaisi, Akhatsikhe, and Batumi, as well as theological secondary schools in Poti, Kvareli, Kobuleti, Gori, Zugdidi, and Tzkaltubo. In 1997, unrest arose within the Georgian Church. Representatives of many Georgian monasteries demanded that the Georgian Church withdraw from the World Council of Churches, of which Patriarch Ilia had at the time been a high-ranking member of, arguing that the WCC's activity had taken on an ecclesiological character. The Georgian Church, under Ilia's purview, subsequently withdrew from the WCC and the Conference of European Churches, though it continued to participate in open dialogues between Orthodox Christians and representatives of Christian and non-Christian confessions. Frankly, I must say Patriarch Ilia made the right decision. While I respect the Orthodox leaders who have taken part in the WCC, especially Patriarch Theophilos III, whose undertakings even within the WCC I find admirable, I personally think it's best to avoid that institution. Ilia also canonized many saints during his primacy, ancient saints and figures of the 19th and 20th centuries. This includes saints we've covered and mentioned before on this channel, like Saint Gabriel the Fool for Christ.
Didi sixaruli ეს ერთი საათია დამთავრდა წმინდა სინოდის სხდომა და მამა გაბრიელი ურგებაძე აღიარებულია წმინდანად.
Saints Ioane and Ioane Georgi of Betania, Saint George Kondidi, Patriarch Kirion III, Saint Ilia Chavchavadze, the parents of Saint Nino equal to the apostles, Saint Zebulon and Susanna, and so many others that we've yet to discuss. Dozens upon dozens. Even hundreds of holy men and women were officially recognized. Then another extremely significant event of Ilia's patriarchal ministry occurred. The construction of the new patriarchal cathedral, Sameba, or Holy Trinity, started in 1995 and completed in 2004. It was dedicated to the 2000th anniversary of the Nativity of Christ. It was also funded entirely by public donations. This is the largest cathedral in Georgia and one of the largest in the Orthodox world, and as someone who has been in it many times, it is truly magnificent. On the day of its consecration, Patriarch Ilia was joined by bishops and clergy from Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, Russia, Serbia, Romania, Cyprus, Greece, Poland, Albania, and even the Orthodox Church in America. The entire Orthodox world was there alongside Patriarch Ilia. His beatitude also established many initiatives outside of the direct purview of the Church. In 2005, he established the International Charitable Foundation of the Catholicos Patriarch of Georgia for the revival and development of spirituality, culture, and science, which partly works to support preventative measures in the struggle against drug addiction. In 2006, he founded the International Center for Georgian Church Music and Folk Song. From 2007 to 2008, the Patriarchate also established nursing courses, a college of ecology and landscaping, beekeeping courses, and schools of icon painting, cloisonne enamel, stone and wood carving, and needlework. In 2008, he founded the secular Georgian University of St. Andrew I called. It's especially important to note the Patriarch's focus on intellectual education, especially in the field of science, which some in Western Orthodox circles have wrongfully begun to frown upon. Patriarch Ilia also produced a multitude of creative works, writings, sermons, icons, and even hymns. He reached out towards all aspects of Orthodox Christianity. These works have not breached containment, with Georgian Orthodoxy not being easily accessible to foreign audiences through the internet, so they're difficult to find. But we can listen to some special hymns of his, which I should mention have been playing throughout the entire video, and you can find them in the description. One of his most moving hymnographical compositions, his Kyrie eleison, and other such hymns were released in 2007 on a CD called Glory to God in the Highest. His compositions have also been sung by Georgian delegations in many countries as well as within Georgia. Take a listen. Later on, in 2007, during a period of political instability, with the third president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, being more unpopular than ever, his beatitude publicly called in a sermon for consideration of establishing constitutional monarchy under the Bagrationi dynasty, the rightful heirs to the Georgian throne since the time of King Parnavaz I in the 3rd century BC. This was a royal line that had been exiled by the Russian Empire in the 19th century. The idea became quite popular amongst the Georgian public, with 40 to 70% of the Georgian public calling for a return to monarchy, according to multiple polls from the time. Patriarch Ilia even personally baptized Prince Georgi Bagration Mukhrani, labeling him the Prince of Georgia in a ceremony including the entire Georgian Synod. Patriarch Ilia devoted special attention to the demographic situation in Georgia. At the time, through both societal normalization of abortion during the USSR and terrible economic circumstances, the Georgian population was at a standstill. He appealed to the people with a new initiative. If the parents so desire, the Catholicos Patriarch will personally become the godfather of every third child in any family, regardless of ethnicity. The first such mass baptism took place on January 19, 2008 in Sameba Cathedral. In 2 years, Ilia already had 3,700 godchildren. By the end of the initiative, over 50,000.
როგორ გაჩნდა ეს იდეა, რომ საქართველოს პატრიარქი ყოფილიყო ნათლია მესამე, მეოთხე და შემდგომი შვილებისა?
ეს გაჩნდა ისე, რომ მე სულ ვფიქრობდი, რა პრობლემები დგას ჩვენი ერის წინაშე, ჩვენი ქვეყნის წინაშე, ეკლესიის წინაშე. ერთ-ერთი ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი პრობლემა არის დემოგრაფიული პრობლემა. როცა შობადობა იყო დაბალი და ამ დროს დაიბადა ეს იდეა. უბრალოდ ბევრი მთხოვდა მე რომ ყოფილიყავი ნათლია და აი თავისთავად წარმოეშვა ეს ხაზიერდა ეს იდეა და დღეს 23,000 ნათლულია და აი ამ დღეებში 1,500 ნათლური მიემატება კიდე.
მათ შორის ჩემი მესამე შვილის თქვენი ნათლულია ირაკლი და მართლა ეს იყო ძალიან ისეთი, ვთქვათ, ჩემს ცხოვრებაში ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი დღე, როდესაც ჩვენ ყველა მოვედით, რომ მოგვენათლა ის.
The Patriarch had so many godchildren, an exception had to be made on the rule that forbids god siblings from marrying each other. When it comes to demographics, there's a lot more to be done to save the Georgian people. But Patriarch Ilia contributed more than any one man could have dreamt of. Unfortunately, this wonderful accomplishment has become all the Patriarch was known for in Western circles, with this initiative tied to every post or mention of the Patriarch's passing, and nothing else. How tragic, when there was so much more to our Ilia. His beatitude also gave great attention to restoring relations with foreign monasteries that had once belonged to the Georgian Church, especially the Ivran Monastery on Mount Athos and the Monastery of the Cross in Jerusalem. Both of these monasteries now owned by the Greek Orthodox Church. While ultimately unsuccessful in achieving the goal of re-obtaining these beautiful monasteries, Patriarch Ilia re-established ties that had been weakened over the course of hundreds of years. In 2009, his beatitude assigned Metropolitan Demetre Shiolashvili of Batumi to work also as the administrator of the Georgian Apostolic parishes in North America. His job description was to begin organizing the parishes into a basic diocesan structure. Because of the historical vulnerability of Georgia to invasion, there had always been a great pursuit of protecting Georgian self-identity. Such a self-identity has always been fought against by external forces. Pressure exerted previously by Persia produced a multitude of martyrs. Pressure exerted by Armenia caused many disturbances, and we cannot forget the subjugation under the Mongols as well, and Islamic pressure from the Ottomans and the Seljuks had been a threat for 1,300 years. Additionally, the supposed rescue of Georgia by the Russian Empire in the 19th century resulted only in a suppression of the Georgian language and culture. It also reduced the autocephaly of the Georgian Orthodox Church to an exarchate of the Russian Orthodox Church. This pressure was amplified by the Tsardom's successor, the Soviet Union. And now, in recent times, when Georgia has again tried to recover her self-identity, there has been a major political, economic, and societal invasion from Western countries. These concerns are part of the environment which caused Patriarch Ilia to speak out in defense of his people many times. Indeed, our Patriarch Ilia was not only the spiritual father of Georgia, he was the guardian of her culture. He spent much of his patriarchate, especially in the 2010s, responding to what some might call contemporary politics, but are really responding to cultural invasions of the West. In 2013, Patriarch Ilia urged Georgian authorities to stop a gay rights rally planned by the EU-backed organization Identoba, or Identity, in Tbilisi on May 17, 2013, to mark International Day Against Homophobia. He stated that the rally was a violation of the majority's rights in reference to Georgian citizens and an insult to the Georgian nation. Following his comments, thousands of Georgians led by Georgian Orthodox priests took to the streets of Tbilisi to protest the gay rights rally. Eventually, there was escalating violence and the rally had to be abandoned, and the activists were driven by the police in a bus to safety. This response to the rally was condemned the world over by various Western countries and organizations, as well as liberal Georgian political actors. But the Georgian people and church persevered, protecting their culture from this foreign invasion. Patriarch Ilia demanded that television be censored to remove sexual content. He denounced school textbooks for insufficient patriotism. He lectured against what he called extreme liberalism, and he warned against Western pseudo-culture from abroad. He opposed attempts to give other religious confessions equal status under Georgian law, and he condemned international education exchange and working abroad as unpatriotic. In these ways, Patriarch Ilia contributed greatly to the preservation of Georgian culture in these difficult decades. On December 25, 2017, Patriarch Ilia marked the 40th anniversary of his enthronement as Patriarch. During the service, many representatives of the government and parliament attended together with the parish. Representatives of the Patriarchate of the Russian Church also attended. The solemn liturgy went underway, and what a glorious 40 years it had been by this point. From a subjugated church hanging by a thread to an encompassing and incredibly loved force for good throughout the entire country. Patriarch Ilia continued to serve the Lord as he led the flock of Christ in Georgia with paternal love. For his entire ministry, he was the most trusted leader, the most trusted figure in all of Georgia. In fact, in a 2014 poll, it was revealed that Patriarch Ilia had a favorability rating of 96% among the Georgian people, something unseen anywhere.
In the past 50 years, the politicians, we know what kind of politicians we had, all the corrupted people, that they made revolution, they made this, they gave it a lot of damage to Georgia, started with Shevardnadze, Saakashvili, and now the Georgian dream is better, but still, there are many things to do which they are not doing. But Patriot, he would shine like a diamond, among these people. That's why people loved him. They trusted him. They hoped on him, and he did do a lot of good things for Georgia.
During his later years, Patriarch Ilia had begun to suffer from Parkinson's disease. Regardless, he persevered with love in his service in Christ. By this point, he was held up by his assistants when attempting to participate in any religious services, even just to walk around. Many Georgians lamented over the state of his body and wrongly suggested the Georgian church was guilty of puppeteering the elderly patriarch, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Patriarch Ilia loved his people and his church so much. I'm sure he felt nothing but joy that he was helped by others to give him the ability to continue serving his people for that much longer.
Patriarchi, თვალს შემდომას, ყოველი ჩემი შესვენებისა, მე შევძღო უფალს, რომ უფალმა გადმოხედოს საქართველოს თავისი მოწყალეთ მოკლით, ალბადმინოს ამ ძიმე ჟვრით, რათა გავაგრძელოთ გზა უფლისა.
By this time, Patriarch Ilia had become frail and tired. He was not seen too often. He was still beloved by all, but everyone understood that there would soon come a time when Georgia would lose her beloved father, and this era would come to an end. The church procedures operated as normal, as it was understood that though others were working in Ilia's stead, they were fulfilling his wishes at any given time. His beatitude still gave sermons and released statements, though with great difficulty. Throughout the Russian-Ukraine war, which began in 2022, the Patriarch repeatedly called for peace. calling the war a deep heartache, as I'm sure it's been for all of us Orthodox Christians. And in 2023, Patriarch Ilia appointed Metropolitan Shio as the locum tenens, the same position Patriarch Ilia had once occupied many decades ago. On January 6, 2026, Patriarch Ilia delivered what would be his final Christmas epistle, warning against the abuse of freedom of speech as one of the most difficult tests of our time. And a couple of months later, on March 17, 2026, the Patriarch was rushed to the hospital due to gastrointestinal bleeding, before passing away at the age of 93. His death mourned by every Georgian throughout the entire world.
მე მინდა რომ ჩვენ ყველამ ერთად ვიგალობოთ ღირსარ შეშმარიტად. ღირსარ შეშმარიტად რათა გადიდებდე შეღთის
His services were attended by an incomprehensible multitude. His godchildren, carrying white flowers as they walked in the crowds, created a sea of lights, showing the lives of those who Patriarch Ilia personally had touched. The emotional faces of men and women experiencing a loss so great that it can't be expressed. A feeling of indescribable emptiness, a hole in the hearts of all. Many who had only known Ilia as Patriarch for all their lives.
ყოვლად წმინდა ღვთისმშობელმა დედამ გადაგაფარო თავისი კალთა თქვენ და სრულიად საქართველოს.
It has been said that Georgia has been orphaned, and that cannot be truer. Though Saint Ilia will continue to pray for us forevermore in heaven, he's been lost to us on earth. For half a century, Saint Ilia watched over us. Even longer did he love us. Every man, woman, and child who can call themselves Georgian lost a loving, watchful, protective, kind, and holy Father, and his memory will remain in our hearts forever. Madloba ყველაფრისთვის, წმინდა ილია.